Kings Canyon National Park is a 461,901-acre national park located in Central California. It is just to the north of Sequoia National Park, and because the two parks share a border, they are often referred to as Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. The Owens Valley Paiute, or Eastern Mono people lived in, or at least visited the area that is now Kings Canyon, beginning in about 5000 to 4000 BC. The Yokut people of the Central Valley spent summers in the mountains for hunting, gathering, and trade, but did not establish any permanent settlements due to the harsh winter climate at higher elevations. The population of the area was between 15,000 and 20,000 Yokut people and around 6,000 Mono people. In the 16th century, a group of Eastern Mono moved from the Sierra Nevada to the Central Valley and settled near the Kings River, forming their own group known as the Monachis or the Western Mono. The Western Mono eventually split up into 6 different groups, including the Wabanach, who inhabited the Grant Grove area. Most of the population was unfortunately decimated by a smallpox epidemic in 1862, and the native population in the area today is still very small. There wasn't much Spanish exploration in the area until 1805, when Gabriel Moraga led an expedition through the Central Valley and crossed the Kings River. There was limited fur trapping in the lower elevations of the park in the 1820s, and in 1848 some gold prospectors came to the area, but they were not successful. In 1858, one of these unsuccessful gold miners discovered the giant forest in what is now Sequoia National Park, which led more people to explore the area. Through the 1860s, a road was built to Grant Grove and logging began, with the first sawmill in the area being opened in 1862. During this time, most of the Converse Basin, one of the largest sequoia groves in the world, was logged, but the bull tree, which is the 6th largest tree in the world, along with between 60 and 100 of the other tallest trees, were left. Though the government expressed an interest in protecting the area in the 1870s, logging still continued through the decade. In 1875, one 300-foot sequoia was cut down, and a cross-section of this sequoia was sent to the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition of 1876. Some people didn't think it was real, and they called it the California hoax. In 1873, John Muir first visited the park, and in 1880, due to the efforts of Colonel George W. Stewart, the federal government suspended logging in the area. The park was originally established as General Grant National Park in 1890, but on March 4th of 1940, it was expanded and renamed as Kings Canyon National Park. Kings Canyon itself is one of the deepest canyons in America at a depth of 1,200 feet, or 2,499 meters at its deepest point. However, because the canyon walls were flattened by glacial activity during the last ice age, they only rise about 4,000 feet or so in most places, which makes the canyon appear shallower than like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. So it's more like a valley than a canyon. Along the eastern edge of the park are the Palisades, which are a subrange of the Sierras, with 4 peaks over 14,000 feet, or 4,300 meters, including the highest point in the park, North Palisade, at 14,248 feet, or 4,343 meters. The eastern boundary of the park is formed by the Sierran crust. There are multiple steep, rugged ranges, mountain lakes, and canyons around the park, and these geographic formations are made up of granite, diorite, and monzonite, formed by subduction along the North American Pacific Plate. The majority of the park has a warm summer Mediterranean climate, and the lowest elevations have a hot summer Mediterranean climate. At Grant Grove, the average annual high temperature is 59.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average annual low is 36.6 degrees Fahrenheit, but temperatures as high as 91 degrees and as low as -6 degrees have been recorded. It gets about 42 inches of precipitation each year, and 186 inches of snow. The Cedar Grove Visitor Center, which is at an elevation of 4,783 feet, or 1,458 meters, has an average annual high temperature of 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit and an average annual low of 38.4 degrees, along with about 38.81 inches of precipitation. Around 20% of all the plant species in California can be found in Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks. Because of this park is designated as part of the Sequoia Kings Canyon Biosphere Reserve, and the lowest elevations of the park have a chaparral ecosystem with various brush and shrubs, along with oaks, sycamores, and willows along the waterways. Mid-elevations contain a variety of conifers, including giant sequoias. One of these sequoias is the 2nd largest tree on Earth, General Grant, which is around 2,000 years old and is 267.4 feet, or 81.5 meters tall. It was proclaimed the nation's Christmas tree on April 28th of 1926, and it was declared a national shrine on March 29th of 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower to honor fallen soldiers. This tree is the only living thing that has been given this distinction. Animals in the park include Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep, mountain lions, black bears, pikas, yellow-bellied marmots, gray-crowned rosy finches, and Yosemite toads. This park gets fewer visitors than any of the other major Sierra national parks, with only around 700,000 visitors annually, as compared to Sequoia and Yosemite, which both get well over 1 million visitors each year. The park is also largely undeveloped wilderness, so if you want to see the sequoias and the beauty of the Sierras without the crowds, I recommend visiting this park. I went to Kings Canyon when I was younger, and I liked it much more than Yosemite, which was super crowded with people when we went. It's absolutely beautiful, and the sequoias are amazing. I think the only glitch in that trip was that we ended up being stalked by some creepy guy, but that's a story for another day. Sequoia National Park is located in central California in the southern Sierra Nevada. It is the southern sister park to Kings Canyon National Park, so you'll hear them referred to together often. This park covers 404,064 acres of land. The first people to live in the region were the Western Mono, or Monachi. They lived mostly in the foothills of the park near the Kauai River, though there might have been seasonal habitation at higher areas up to the giant forest. In the summer, they would travel east over the mountains to trade. Unfortunately, a smallpox epidemic wiped out most of the population. Of course, Hale Tharp, the miner, discovered the giant forest in 1858, and so he did what every self-respecting frontiersman would do. He started grazing his cattle in the area and built a cabin in a hollowed-out sequoia log, where he lived every summer between 1861 and 1890. And this cabin, now known as Tharp's Log, is still there to this day. And John Muir called it a noble den. I actually cannot believe that I didn't visit this when I went to the park, because it looks really cool. Tharp also participated in early efforts to prevent logging in the area. So even though sequoia wood splinters easily and therefore isn't as good for timber as, the redwood trees or other trees, some people still tried. Some of these people were members of the Kauai Colony, a utopian scientific socialist community that was established in 1886. They never had more than 150 people living up in the Sierra Nevada, though at one point they had between 300 and 500 official members across the country. Their economy was based on logging, which they tried to continue even after the national park was created on September 28th of 1890, which of course got them into legal trouble, and the colony was disbanded in 1892. Just before the park was established, though, they renamed the General Sherman tree to the Karl Marx tree. But after the park was established, the tree was renamed to General Sherman. And General Sherman is the largest tree in the world by mass, and it's 275 feet, or 83 meters tall, with a base of 36 feet, or 11 meters. Morrow Rock is a granite dome at the head of Morrow Creek, and it's a popular location for rock climbing, except during peregrine falcon nesting season, when the southern and eastern faces of the rock are closed. It can also be climbed via a 797-foot-long stairway, and the current stairway was built in 1931 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. There was another stairway that was built in 1917, but it didn't last very long. The park also contains Mount Whitney, which at 14,505 feet, or 4,421 meters above sea level, is the highest peak in the contiguous United States. It was originally called Tumanaguya by the Paiute, and interestingly, it is only 84.6 miles away from the lowest point in North America, which is Badwater Basin in Death Valley, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. The most commonly used trail is the Mount Whitney Trail, which is around 22 miles round trip, and the hike can typically be done in 12 to 18 hours, or over 1 or 2 nights of camping. People who try to do the hike in one day will typically leave as early as 1 a.m. before the sun comes up, so that they can complete it. There are other longer routes that can be taken, along with scrambles and technical climbs. Another popular attraction to the park is Tocopa Falls, a 1,200-foot or 356-meter waterfall that can be reached by a 1.7-mile hike along the Kauai River. The park contains over 270 known caves, but only one of these caves is open to visitors, and that's Crystal Cave, which is 3.4 miles long and the second longest cave in the park. When my family went to this park, we visited this cave, but I did not enjoy it at all. I was absolutely horrified by the idea that we were in a relatively small enclosed space under tons and tons of rock, and I spent the whole time terrified that the cave was going to collapse or something. It was honestly pretty traumatic for little me, which is probably why I'm still afraid of caves to this day. The longest cave in the park and in the state of California is Lilburn Cave, which has 17 miles of explored tunnels. It's pretty cool that there are still undiscovered caves and unexplored tunnels, even in known caves, and if I wasn't so spelunkophobic, yes, that is a real word that I just looked up, I think that it would be really cool to go and explore these caves. There are actually 5 different climate classifications contained within Sequoia National Park: tundra, Mediterranean-influenced subarctic climate, Mediterranean-influenced warm summer human continental climate, warm summer Mediterranean climate, and hot summer Mediterranean climate. Higher elevations in the park are cooler and drier, hence the tundra and subarctic climates, while the lower elevations are warmer and wetter. At the Giant Forest Visitor Center, which is at an elevation of 6,444 feet, or 1,964 meters, the average extreme minimum temperature is 12 degrees Fahrenheit. The average high in the area is 61 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average low is 40.2 degrees, with about 41 inches of rain per year. Each climate zone has plants associated with that climate, so the park includes alpine tundra vegetation, subalpine vegetation, conifer forest, and chaparral vegetation. Animals in the park include coyote, badger, black bear, bighorn sheep, owls, opossums, snakes, turtles, and muskrats. Death Valley National Park lies on the border of California and Nevada, east of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It has the distinction of being the hottest, driest, and geographically lowest of all the national parks, and all of North America. It is also the largest of all the national parks outside of Alaska, at 3,422,024 acres. 93% of this land is designated as wilderness. Despite the harsh climate of the area, people have been living there from as early as 7,000 BC. The first group of people were likely the Navarre Spring people, and these people were hunter-gatherers, and during this time, the climate in the park was milder and more habitable, with more lakes and large game than you'll find there now. Then, in around 3000 BC, the Mesquite Flat people came to the region and pushed the Navarre Spring people out, and then beginning about 2,000 years ago, the Saratoga Spring people came to the region, and by this time, the area had likely become the hot desert that it is today. The Saratoga Springs people left a variety of artifacts, including petroglyphs and stone patterns in the area. In around 1000 AD, the Tibisha people lived in the region, and today they are federally recognized as the Death Valley Tibisha Shoshone Band of California, and according to a 2010 census, have a population of 124. In 1849, a group of travelers called the Bennett Arcade Party, who were on their way to the goldfields in California, tried to take a shortcut and ended up in the valley. They were the ones who gave it its name, although they were able to find some springs and survive by eating some of their oxen and burning woods from their wagons. And only one person in that group died. The rest made it out just fine, but apparently it was not a pleasant experience. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a few boomtowns were established to mine gold, silver, and borax. If you've ever seen the brand 20 Mule Team Borax, it's named after the 20 mule teams that were used to transport mined borax out of the valley and to the nearest railway between 1883 and 1889. Then, in the 1920s, tourism began to increase as the location was a popular setting for television, books, movies, and radio programs. Resorts began to be built near the Stovepipe Wells and Furnace Creek, and in 1933 it was declared a national monument. In 1994, it became a national park. The park lies in an interface zone between the Great Basin and the Mojave Desert, and most of the geographic formations in the park include salt flats, badlands, sand dunes, along with, as the name suggests, mountains, canyons, and valleys. Badwater Basin is 282 feet, or 86 meters below sea level, making it the lowest point in North America. The most well-known sand dunes in the park are the Mesquite Flats sand dunes, which I've looked at pictures of and I think are so pretty. I do think that sand dunes have an appeal, because to me they just look like an ocean of sand. That is what I'm trying to paint here, but as you can see, it's not really coming out too well. But anyway, there are 3 major mountain ranges near Death Valley: the Sierra Nevada, the Argus Range, and the Panamint Range, all of which create a rain shadow effect on the area and create the hot desert climate. In case you were wondering, the climate of Death Valley is considered a hot desert climate. On July 10th of 1913, Furnace Creek hit the highest surface temperature ever recorded on Earth. The temperature got to be 134 degrees Fahrenheit, or 56.7 degrees Celsius. The average high temperatures for July, which is typically the hottest month in the park, are 117 degrees, and the average low is 91 degrees. The coolest month is December, with an average high of 65.6 degrees Fahrenheit and an average low of 41.1 degrees. So if you're planning to visit the park but don't enjoy temperatures like over 100 degrees, you should definitely avoid visiting in the summer. Typically, there are about 8 or 9 days each year where the temperature gets below freezing. And of course, as you might imagine, the park is also very dry, with an average of 1.92 inches of rain falling in areas of the park that are below sea level annually. In October of 2015, there was what was called a 1,000-year flood event in the park, where over 3 inches of rain fell, which apparently was pretty catastrophic and caused major damage. But typically, rain in the park will fall in a short period of time and cause flash floods to occur and shallow ephemeral lakes to form. Honestly, I'm not sure what the difference between a puddle and a very shallow ephemeral lake is, but I'm guessing that these so-called lakes are basically large puddles in the desert. Animal species in the park include bighorn sheep, coyotes, mountain lions, mule deer, bobcats, over 300 bird species, 36 species of reptiles, and a species of fish known as the Death Valley Pupfish that is found only in the park. And this, because of the small population, this fish is considered endangered because it's only found in Salt Creek and Cotton Ball Marsh. Another interesting species is the shrike, which is a type of bird that will impale its prey, which typically consists of insects like the Death Valley June beetle, on thorns and other vegetation, which is brutal but also kind of cool. There are about 1,000 species of plants in the park, including creosote bush, desert holly, mesquite, pinyon juniper, blackbrush, Joshua trees, bristlecone and limber pine, and rock lady, which is a flowering perennial that grows in limestone crevices on the north faces of Titus and Fall Canyon in the Californian section of the park. Personally, I'm not really sure if I would ever want to visit this park. I do have a bit of a fascination with deserts, probably because of my love of Egyptology and the fact that I'm constantly staring at pictures of the Saharan desert. But if I were actually placed in an environment like this, I think I'd probably just shrivel up in the sun or something. 130 degrees Fahrenheit is a few dozen degrees too hot for me, but I would like to see the Mesquite Flat Dune Field. Again, that is what I was trying to paint here. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know that I always learn a lot when I do research for my national park videos, and I know that I did these last couple of videos out of order. For some reason, I did California Part 4 before California Part 3, but hopefully I'll be back on track with Arizona Part 2 and Nevada in a couple of weeks here. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye!